All right. Hello, everybody. You probably know that you are watching GroupBy 2021. And here's the code of conduct. Short version, be respectful and kind. And for more details, you have probably read this on several other slides, so I'm not going to go into the whole thing. And today would not be possible without some amazing sponsors, including Redgate, that this is a Redgate session today. Don't worry, it's not going to be all about Redgate products. I'm going to show you a little bit, but this is useful for anybody who wants to learn about extended events. And Eleanor, what I'll do is stop occasionally and ask you if there are questions. So I'm Kathi Kellenburger. I'm the editor of Simple Talk at Redgate. I'm also a DevOps advocate. And I'm co-leader of the data platform WIT group. We formed after PASS ended, and I was involved with the PASS Women in Tech group for about 5 years before that. And we're doing all kinds of really cool things. We have switched to a day-long event format, and we just had one a couple of weeks ago, an event on mental health, and it was just amazing. The recordings are out there if you want to take a look out on YouTube. Maybe I can find them and get the, I didn't think about providing the link. My lifelong passion is being an instructor at Launch Code, which is a nonprofit in St. Louis that teaches people who want to get into technology, that have had kind of dead-end jobs, very low-paying jobs, and get those people trained, and they get careers in technology. And it's an amazing thing that I get to be part of. So we're going to talk today about an introduction to extended events. So I really have to confess that I avoided using extended events for a long time. There was even one point after watching a session by Aaron Stellato that I said, you know what? I am never touching Profiler again, because what I would do is use it, not necessarily on production, but like on my local system, like if I was working on an ETL package or a reporting services report and something goofy was coming over to SQL Server, I would just fire up Profiler and capture the statements really quick. Or maybe there was something that I wanted to capture on a production system. I would create a trace and possibly run it for a limited time to capture the information. But I just kept finding myself going back into those tools that I was comfortable with, that I was familiar with. So it took a long time for me. I had to listen to my colleague Grant Fritchie. I think he was the one that finally tipped me over to the edge to make me feel confident and say, yeah, I can do this. So what this is about today then is for people, and I know you're out there, people like myself who have been hesitant to really make the leap to extended events. And what's really sad is this has been around for a long time, a really long time. This is 2021, I think, and extended events have been around since 2008. That's a long time. And I understand part of the reason that we've been hesitant, because at first there was not a GUI and you had to deal with XML. And most of us are not comfortable with that. So what are these things anyway? What in the world are they? So it captures things that happen on the server. As I mentioned, the data comes back in XML, and originally there was no way to really look at that data unless you knew XML. There was no way to set it up unless you knew all the commands to do it, which, you can figure it out if you spend time in the documentation. But eventually, and it was just a couple of, not sure if it was 2008 R2 or 2012, somewhere in there, Microsoft did add a GUI to make it easier. To create an extended event, you need the alter event session. And if you want to query it, you need the view server state permission. So just keep that in mind in case you need to look at those or create them. And this is what the data looks like in the GUI when it comes back. It just comes back in this tabular format, and you can do some cool things with it that I'll show you. So what about Profiler? Like, is that going away? It's not going away. I doubt it's going away. And I've noticed that things kind of just don't go away anymore. And so who knows? It might go away in a future version. It's been around for a long time since it's been deprecated, and I expect it'll still be around for a while. The problem is that there's no investment in it. As new features are added to SQL Server, Microsoft will include new extended events. They're constantly adding new extended events that you can capture. For example, I don't think there's anything in Profiler about always on availability groups. Well, there are in extended events, okay? Because they stopped adding new features to Profiler. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure, maybe wrong. But I haven't tried using Profiler to look at availability groups. I don't think there's anything there. So let's take a look at what one looks like. So I'm just going to tell you that there are some versions of SSMS out there, some newer versions out there where the GUI for extended events is broken. And I spent like 2 hours yesterday trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. And then I found out it was the version of SSMS. I was using 18.7 yesterday, and this one, I can't really see this because of, there we go, that black thing at the top. This is 17.9, and I got it to work. So there is another version of SSMS out there, but I was really afraid to, once I found one that worked, I said, let's just stop. So this folder here, extended events, is under management. And there are some that are already built in. For example, here's one, always on health. I'm not using always on my little local laptop, but that session is already there, and I can just turn it on if I do end up needing it. There are some that I have in place, and sometimes I have copied these from other articles or blog posts out there that I keep around just in case I need it. And notice it's got this little red square, meaning that it's turned off. Here's one that I created actually a few months ago. It's running now. And what I'm going to do is just make a few changes to my SQL Server and then change them back. Try to get this to fire. And actually what I'm going to do is right click and watch live data. I've had mixed luck with the watch live data. Sometimes it doesn't populate right away. We'll see. So I got all those changes I made, and there it goes. There it populated. So I've got that there was an error reported. Really wasn't an error, but that's just the name of the event, and a timestamp. That's not really a lot of information, but if I click here on each one of these, I can see more information down here. I can see that which database was I was connected to, and here the actual statement that was the message that was running. So even when I first saw extended events, this is all I saw, and I thought, oh, this is really not that helpful. But thanks to watching other people like Grant, I found out that I could just right click here and add some more columns. So I could add, like, for example, database name, the message. And I don't know why I've got Outlook running. Let's close that. So that makes it much, much easier. And let me choose another column. This is not going to make sense Oh, error number. Let's go with error number, but it is a number. So those are all, okay. So what if I wanted to group? I think I've got to do it. Let me show you another way to get the data. I don't think it works in this live view. I go here. There are a couple of ways to look at the data that I've set up. I'll go through that in the next demo. But there's this event file. If I click that and view target data, and I'm going to go ahead and choose some columns, database name, and I'm going to choose message, and I'm going to choose severity because I just want a number there. And I'm going to select this one, and okay, I found it. You can sort, you can see it's sorting back and forth. I am going to group by this column. I didn't have that option when I was in the live view. So now I've got whatever, I can pick whatever column I'm interested in, and now I've got those events grouped. So such a nice thing. And what I can do is go up, there's more menu items up here. And that is not the right one. It seems like, there we go. I can add an aggregation. So for some reason, I wanted to get the average of this number. Oops. I could do that. Average 10. That might make sense. So there's some cool things that you can do. So let's go back to the slides and I'll continue on. So how in the world do we create a session? Previously, a real long time ago, you had to craft the statements. Luckily, the statements are a lot easier than trace statements, because I know what I would always do if I needed to script it would be to run profilers, export that script out, and then I had to make a couple tweaks like the path, and then I'd create it. And it was just very difficult with trace because there were just millions of numbers. I couldn't look at it and even understand what was going on. With extended events, it's much better syntax. But with the GUI, since it's available, you really don't have to deal with it too much. So basically, we're creating an event. You have a name. You can add one or more events. You can add actions, which I'll explain in just a minute. You can add one or more targets. And then there's some other options that you might want to tweak. So even if you don't want to use the GUI, you could always handcraft this yourself. I probably wouldn't personally. However, I would probably take the extended event that I did create and then script that out and save it, possibly. So what in the world are the parts? What do we actually need here? So when I'm creating a new session, the first thing I need is the events I want to capture. And there are hundreds here. So I've got to know what I'm looking for. I'll explain in a little bit how I can figure this out, but assume I know what I'm looking for. So I choose my event. And there's this global fields action page. I can choose things from this page. These are optional. These are things that you will see no matter which event you choose. I have just one event here. You can have multiple, and each item will have its own filter. However, you can select, if you do have multiple and you want the same, filter, you want the same actions captured or filter, which we'll get to, you can just hold the shift key down and select more than one and apply it. So it is pretty nice that way. You have to be careful here. These are actions. A lot of times all the action is doing is collecting information. But here's one that creates a mini dump. Here's one that breaks the process in the default debugger. So just be very careful what you choose here. There's an optional filter. Now, this is what was broken on the latest version of SSMS that just drove me nuts yesterday when I was kind of going through the presentation. It was not working. And so I'm going to make sure well, probably the 18.9, it's probably fixed, but I just didn't have time to mess with upgrading whenever I found a version that I had locally that did work. And event fields. So event fields are the ones that are specific or typically collected with that event. And you might have some optional ones. So database name is optional. So click that if you want it. Otherwise, all of these other items will be collected. All right, so we might have other events that also collect database ID, probably tons of them. But this group is what you probably need for that particular event. And so they're automatically collected for you. If you want anything special, you go to the global fields action, where you might get some things like host ID, the SQL statement, things like that. The next thing you need to do is create a target. Now, you can always watch live data. However, you have to have that running before the event happens, and it's not going to save it for you. Ring buffer is a very lightweight way to capture the information. However, it goes away. It doesn't stick around. And that is what I like if I set up an agent job, or if I set something up, an alert in SQL Monitor. I like to query the ring buffer. It's fast to query the ring buffer. However, if I want to go troubleshoot that issue, I really appreciate having an event file in place. The event files, you can have like, let's say you want 5 of them, and they can, you're only going to keep so many, and you might want to not make it by default. They're a gigabyte. I feel like that's too big, and you might get a lot of these files that you'll never look at. And so I typically make them smaller, and they're really useful for going back in time and taking a look at what happened. So I like to use both of those. And there's a few others that you can use as well. Let's see how to actually do this. Okay, so what I would like to do, let me close this one up. I would like to create a new session. There is a wizard too. I have not really used the wizard, and most of the other folks that I've seen present on this have just kind of skipped the wizard as well. We'll just go to new session. But what I'd like to do is capture the information when tempDB grows. So I'm just going to call this tempDB growth. There are templates you can use. These are just like the ones that were in Profiler, if that's helpful to you. I'm just going to go with the blank. And I'd like to start it at the server startup. And I want it to also automatically start, and I'll just do this one. I had a hard time getting the live data to pop up. So we'll see if it happens. And I'm going to go over to events. Now I know that the event I need to capture is called database file size change. There are some other ones that look like they would be it. Let's see if I can find them. I'm not really, let's put in the word file. I might be able to find them. Log file size changed, and like these two, I found that they really don't work for, let's see, this one works. but if you go with specific with log, oh, this one doesn't work. I'm sorry. This one doesn't really capture what you need. This one does not. This is the one we need. Okay. And I just figured this out from trial and error, but I will show you in a bit on how you can figure it out yourself. Okay. So I've got my event that I'd like to capture. Then I click this configure button, which kind of pops a screen over, kind of a weird thing, I think. And the first thing I can do is select a global field. So let's say I want client host name and I want the SQL text. I want to capture those as well. I can go over to filter, and what I'd like to do is to choose database ID equals 2. Again, this is what was not working quite right earlier, so we'll hopefully see that it works. And then over on event field, notice that this is that list I showed you in the slides. I'm going to go ahead and choose database name as well. Let's go ahead and capture that. What you will notice though, is that if I go over to global fields, it also has database name. I only need to collect it in one place. Otherwise, I believe it collects it twice. So let's go over to storage, and I'm going to choose the ring buffer, and I want to not make it so big. Because if it gets too big, it's hard to query. If you've got a SQL agent job or SQL monitor querying that and it's really big, it's going to cause some issues. So I'm just going to say 100 events to keep, and I'm just going to make it 5 megabyte. I don't want it to get as big as the default. And I'm also going to choose event file. You can select a spot for it, or if you don't, it goes to, well, I can't see, not going to worry about going, but it goes to, I believe, the same folder where your SQL Server error log goes. I'm also going to change this to 5 megabyte, and just to keep those files kind of small as well. And click OK. So here's my event that I created. Notice it's already running because I chose that option. So if you don't choose that, you might have to turn it on. I can make changes to this. To make changes, I've got to have it turned off, disabled. So let's take a look at it. I can look at the properties, just can't make changes. Actually, you've already seen everything, but should look. So what we're going to do, if I've named it the same as the previous one, I'll already see some data. Yeah, so it picked up from a file that was already sitting there. But what I'm going to do is go to my, let's close these up. I got too many going. All right. Let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and just open this. Well, I want to show you the ring buffer first. Let's look at that. What does that look like? So it is XML. The ring buffer is XML, but it's the best thing for an automated process to query. And I'll show you a little bit about that. If I gave an hour-long session, I would go into more detail on how to query that if you want to write your own. I am giving the same presentation except a bit longer on Friday. And I think we've decided that the pronunciation is Data Sealy. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that, but be sure to join us on Friday, and I will be giving the same presentation, but a longer version, which I dig into more details on how to look at the XML. All right, let's go back over here. So I showed you what the ring buffer looks like. I'm going to go ahead and bring this guy up again. And what I'm going to do, and hopefully this will work. My temp DB decided to got tired of me making, let's make this one 1 and that one 1, got tired of me making changes, and it was just kind of not changing a lot. So what I want to do is make temp DB grow, auto grow, and then we'll shrink it. Still growing. Hopefully we get some events to pop up. All right, hurry up. We could look and see if any of these are showing up already. Sort that. I think those were from before, right before the session. So it doesn't look like it grew, but let's see if we can get it to shrink. Yeah, so yesterday my temp DB was like a gigabyte after I would shrink it down, and now it's only shrinking down to 2 or 3 gigabytes. So it may not work, but at least you can see it's not really a problem with extended events. It's just my temp DB that is not cooperating. Let me close that up and pull it. I can't remember if you have to pull it up fresh to see the new data. Okay, it's working. So here's the events that I just caused by running that script. And again, we can go in here and we can choose additional columns. We can look at, I want to actually go through a couple of these just to show you how interesting this is. So it does tell you the database name, which we filtered for, the file ID is automatic. Okay, so I've got a bunch that are false. I've got some that are true. True means auto growth. False means I caused it. So when I ran the create statements, that was auto growth. Whenever I ran the shrink, that was me doing it, not automatic. It also gives you the size change, either a positive or negative number. And here it's giving the statement as well. So this is just a really easy thing to set up, and I can capture this important thing about TempDB. So I've worked at places where they had problems with TempDB blowing up and were having a hard time figuring out what was going on with that, because they had a monitoring tool in place. It might have been easier, but could do it with this. All right, let's go back over to the slides. So you might have several profiler traces that you use. How are you going to get rid of those and convert them over to extended events? Now, at one time, Jonathan Kathis is still out there, but he created a stored procedure that would do that for you. The problem is, I don't believe he kept it up to date, and things changed over different versions. I think extended events is pretty, you know what? I forgot to ask if there were any questions. So Eleanor, I've gone through a lot of things without asking.
That's okay, Kathy, because you actually answered the question that we had through as you went, which was, where will you be talking on Friday? So,
oh, yay.
Daily. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So where was I? Oh, Jonathan created that stored procedure, which may work, but I don't know if he kept it up. There was like one version of sequel to the next. Early on, Microsoft made quite a bit of changes, but that might be a possibility if you go out and look. But Microsoft has provided DMVs that help you do that. And I'll show you how to do that with one example. So I also have a trace running for tempdb. So this is what the trace file or the trace scripts looks like, you know, like what in the world does it mean? I don't know what all these numbers are, but I do see that these 92 and 93 are important. It's kind of nice to take a look at those. That's the event number. That is useful. So if you have one, pay attention to those numbers and you'll see why in just a minute. So there are quite a few trace functions that you can use. So this shows me the traces that are running. This is the default trace. I don't want to mess with that. And here's, let's see. Oh, I've got more running than I thought. Okay, I think I want to look at trace 2. Okay, so I just fill in 2. Oops. And I run this query, and there is an article that helps with this. So if you download the code, you'll get that, or I could pop it in the chat, I guess. Where is the chat? I see it. That's a useful link. All right, so the next thing to do is run this one. And what it will do, you've got to have some events there that have been captured in your trace. But what it'll do is it'll tell you what things were in that trace. So I'm capturing data file autogrow, log file autogrow, event 92 and 93. I could have others. You know, that's why if you have the trace file, if you still have it, that is very useful for this. If you don't have it, I don't think there's a way to get it. So another thing inside a trace are filters. And this particular query takes these numbers here and translate them into equal, not equal, etc. So you can run that as well to see what the filters are in that event. However, there is this thing called logical operator that just says, is there a logical operator and or? But it just says, is there one? It doesn't tell you whether it's and or. So that's kind of that's not really great. So in this case, it'd be probably it's database ID. Actually, each one of these are on a different event. But if they were on the same event, you really wouldn't know if it was and or. So this just tells me it was database ID equal to. So hopefully you can figure out what was going on in your trace from that. So then this particular query, and I did not write these queries, I got them from that article. This particular query, you can run and put in those numbers. I went ahead and added some other ones. I was using 92 and 93. There's also some for shrinking that I added. So what this returns is also the columns that you were capturing and also these actions, these extra items. So pay attention over here if there's anything extra you're going to have to set up in your extended events. And the really interesting thing here is even though I've got data file auto grow, auto shrink, log file auto grow, auto shrink, they all map to database file size change. They all 4 of them map to that. So you only have to capture that extended event. I think that's the end.
Great, thanks, Kathy. So we have actually had a question through from Tim Brown. Thank you, Tim. Tim says, any special advice for transitioning to extended events for those of us who have profiler muscle memory?
You might just go and see if you can come up with a list of your favorite profiler things you do, whether it's capturing statements or whatever. Spend a day translating those to extended events. And I've shown you kind of ways you can do it in this last demo. Set those up, you can disable them. And then anytime you would reach for a profiler for your favorite trace, just go turn that extended event session on. Okay. And then just get in the habit of doing that. That really helped me a lot. So, you know, whenever you use Profiler, just go ahead and make an extended event and just start using that instead. Now that's what I would do. So, is there more?
Just Tim saying, great answer, thank you.
All right.
So yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah, so I guess practice makes perfect then would be.
Yeah, it's just you got to make a commitment to it. You really do. So what if you have this data and you want to be notified when something bad happens? Okay, so what you can do is you can set up a job in Agent, or if I'm not sure of other monitoring tools, but Redgate SQL Monitor has a way that you can add it for alerts and reports. So since this is a Redgate session, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you would do this in SQL Monitor. So this thing is in my way. I don't know how to get rid of this. Let's see. I guess my session timed out. Okay. So in SQL Monitor, and I mean, I could give another couple hours on SQL Monitor, but if I go over to configuration and look at custom metrics, I can set up custom metrics. And really what I need for a custom metric is a query that returns a number, just a T-SQL statement that returns a number. So how do I do this with extended events? So I've got a couple of them set up, and let's go ahead and look at this one. And here's the query. It is an XML query. I did not write this, but I can take this and use it to, I can tweak that for my own. For example, just changing the extended event name if I want. And again, in my session on Friday, I'll go drill down into how to do that. The cool thing is that we have a custom metric page where people in the community, here's one from Grant, have set up some of these that anyone can use. It's super easy. I don't know if this one, let's see if this one, I just click this and I can install it. I really recommend taking a look at any of these. Like anything else, you want to make sure that it's not going to do something bad, but typically I just have to do that. However, there's some of them that are based on extended events. So if I just, typically you're going to go by topic, but if I go to this one and I see that it has an extended event, there's the extended event session that I need. So I would have to install that on any server that I wanted to monitor that. And then it gives them, here's that query. And again, it's this XML query. And all I have to do then is click install metric. After I've vetted it, I can make whatever changes I want, choose which server I'm caring about. I can specify that I only want it to be on master, test it. I'm seeing I've already got some that it's captured because that extended event's already out there. They've already done this. And then once you do that, you can specify how often you want it collected. Just like any other custom metric, you can set up alerts, you can set up, tweak how you want the alerts to go. So it's really, really easy to do that. And I'm not going to go through all these slides, but I will on Friday talk about how you can query that XML to make tweaks or, you know, set up your own. If there's one you would like to monitor either with a job or with SQL Monitor and there's not one out there for it, how you can do that yourself. And, you know, I don't have the time, but I really go in. I'm not an XML expert. I just spent some time figuring this out. There are, I do have it in the code. I just don't have time to go through all of those. But here is the query. So one thing I could do is just replace the name of the extended event. And then there's one other thing here where this is 60 minutes. So even if you only tweak those two little things, so we're only wanting to pull up what has happened in the last 60 minutes from that particular extended event. If you only did that, you could use that for a SQL agent job. You could use it for your own monitor custom metric. And if you do that, then maybe if you come up with a really great one, you could submit it to Redgate and we might, you know, put it up on our page for others to use. So I had it a little bit different. Here's the code for if you want to have it in a SQL agent job. So it always has to come up with a count. Here's where it's coming up with a count. And it's like, if the count is greater than 0, then raise an error. So that way that the SQL agent job will fail. And
thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, you got a question?
No, I was just going to say, if people do have any questions, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Obviously, they can tune in to Data Kaylee on Friday.
Yeah. In my slides, let's go back. I'm just about done. There's a couple of other things. If you are struggling to figure out how to capture the parameters of stored procedures, Grant Fritchie has an article about it. Let me pop that into the chat because that's really useful. I usually get a question about this because people have struggled and Grant figured it out. So other thing is a cool option, causality tracking. It will link items together. So anything that's related, there's a special way you can do that. And I'll put that in there too. Also from Grant. Now, I don't know if it's sometimes, where's my chat? Not the black bar at the top's not there when I want it. No, is that it? Yes.
Yeah, that's in there now.
Yeah, and my slides and code are out on GitHub. If you want to grab those. Throw that in as well. And I've mentioned all three of these people. Anything, these are the gurus right here on extended events. And I really appreciate Grant he did a couple years ago, just really sat down with me and helped me out so much. And he will do that for everyone, not just a coworker.